Hey, shalom, 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 shalom. Whoops, let me get my finger out the way there. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Hey, first and foremost, call all Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Kahawadash. And of course, once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, who deserve double honors. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim that are out there on the highways and byways, week in, week out. Also doing videos, various other social media sites, getting this word out. All right, salutations to them. Hey, all in trying to wake up the remaining hopefully elect while we still can. Because, hey, we can see that family of the word is right around the corner. Because all this info that's coming out, and so much division now, and the games that they used to run on the people, can't do that anymore. So they got to do something. Stop all this information coming out. He's being exposed. All right. This is copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. Hey, this is a beautiful time here. It's so much division, and it's expression I've been using lately. Lots of leopards eating lots of faces. Basically meaning this is what you voted for. This is what you're getting. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just to show you, it's talking about division. Everybody knows about what happened in the White House with Trump and J.D. Vance yelling at Zelensky and throwing him out. Here's some more. Elon goes into full panic as new scandal erupts. Piece of shit. J.D. Vance is a piece of shit. Adam Bolton tears into Trump's explosive. Let's see, here it is. Trump and Vance have humiliated the United States after shouting at Zelensky. How states are stopping powerless Trump. All right. Inside the Trump purge, federal workers tell their stories. Bernie Sanders warns Iowa City about rise of oligarchy power in the United States. All right. And on and on and on. Erasing history from the U.S. to Germany. Wars are won by teachers, blah, 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 blah. Are attacks on education part of an authoritarian shift? All right. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. South Florida residents divided over Trump's language executive order. Oh, okay. Well, let's go ahead and roll this. Whoops. Go ahead and roll this video. Dadgummit.
To know what you, congressmen, and your fellow congressmen are going to do to rein in the megalomaniac in the White House.
Last week, at town hall meetings across the country, constituents clashed with lawmakers, Republican and Democrat alike, over anger about cuts to social services, Doge's chainsaw strategy ripping apart the government, and general chaos that has become our everyday reality since Trump took office a little over a month ago. It seems people from rural Texas to suburban Connecticut to central Oregon and everywhere in between are paying attention, and they don't like what they see. Could this be the rumblings of actual resistance? Let's get into it. One of the more high-profile town hall events happened over the weekend. This report from AP caught my attention with the headline, Idaho town hall meeting turns chaotic after woman is forcibly removed for shouting at speakers. I'm someone who really likes to know the source of the story I'm reading, who wrote it and published it, because that can really help to understand biases and other motives. But that gets really difficult in our increasingly monopolized media landscape. Using the Ground News browser extension, it's helpful to see that this news source has a left-leaning bias. And I love the Ground News web browser extension because I can see it while I browse news articles, allowing me to understand biases in real time. And if I want to see how other sources are framing the story, I can click full coverage. On the Ground News website, you can see that there are 50 sources covering this topic. Among them, The left publication The New Republic uses the headline, "Woman Dragged Out of Republican Town Hall After Asking Question," while the right-leaning New York Post frames it as, "Idaho Town Hall Turns into Chaos After Dem Legislative Candidate Dragged Out by Security for Heckling Speakers."
See,
Very different takes, and it's a clear example of how consuming news from only one perspective can limit your understanding of a...
exactly. That's why it's always a good idea to cross-reference. All right, just to see, demonstrate it to you, because you might be getting a skewed view purposely. All right, because we know how these devils work. All right.
of a situation. This is where Ground News comes in and why I've been using them for over a year. Today's partner, Ground News, is an app and website that offers tools to help you critically analyze the news you read, providing context to understand the full picture. For example, I can see each publication's factuality rating, as well as the overall factuality ratings of publications discussing this story, so I know which is more trustworthy. And I can see who owns which publication, and that the overall ownership skews more towards media conglomerates than independent news outlets. By using the Ground News Vantage subscription, I can also see the blind spot feed, where I can see stories disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. I feel better equipped to make sense of what's happening in the world without being influenced by just one perspective. I'm always really impressed with Ground News and genuinely think they're a great resource. So if you want to stay informed on U.S. politics and more, scan my QR code or click the link in the description, or go to ground.news/Legia to get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use, which comes to about $5 a month. Ground News is subscriber funded, so they don't rely on ads that could introduce bias, and subscribing supports my channel and an independent team working to keep the media transparent. Thanks, Ground News. After a month of what's felt like complete chaos for most people, including some Trump supporters, it seems the honeymoon is over. According to reporting from the New York Times and others, and I'll link all my
didn't last long.
Description, town hall meetings across the country are being held as Congress takes its first recess since the beginning of the new administration. These town halls are meant as routine opportunities for elected officials to meet directly with constituents to hear feedback, and they're events that are often punctuated by nothing. Snores, silence, crickets. Parks and Rec is an accurate example. Not these days, however. Now, Republicans at these town halls are facing what the New York Times describes as, quote, a groundswell of fear and disaffection that's making them rethink even holding town halls to begin with. And while many of the disgruntled voters voicing their anger in these meetings are Democrats, there are Republicans coming forward as well, concerned especially with cuts to veterans' benefits, Social Security, and Medicaid, and the security of American data in the hands of a foreign-born tech billionaire. The uproar in town halls, with hundreds and sometimes thousands of people showing up, is happening in Democratic districts as well as districts where Republicans barely hold on to power, and even in some deeply red districts. It's happening in rural Texas, the suburbs of Atlanta, in Wisconsin, in Oklahoma, and in Democrat-led districts in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Oregon. Journalists are likening it to the rabble-rousing done by Tea Partiers at town halls in the wake of Obama's election and subsequent push for healthcare overhaul. The difference now seems to be that the angry voices aren't united behind one far-right or any other type of ideology, and instead come from disparate groups, with even some constituents coming to ask how their elected representatives will do more to tear down the government. And I think this illuminates a truth in this country, and that is that literally no one is happy with how things are going. Well, except for the billionaires. They're happy. But even staunch Republicans are starting to question the fast-moving MAGA chainsaw. According to reporting from Slate, 8 Republicans wrote a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson last week, warning him that, quote, slashing Medicaid would have serious consequences, particularly in rural and predominantly Hispanic communities, where hospitals and nursing homes are already struggling to keep their doors open. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley has warned against cuts to Medicaid, as has Steve Bannon. And recent polling backs up the anecdotal, on-the-ground evidence that, statistically speaking, people are pissed. A Washington Ipsos poll found that Trump's approval rating has fallen to 45%, and Elon's is only 34%. And I love that reporters aren't even covering what Vice President J.D. Vance's approval ratings are, because he's the forgotten nerd in the corner who doesn't get invited to the cool kids table. Can you think of another president who routinely made interview appearances with some random aide more than his own VP? I think that bodes well for the fear on the left that J.D. Vance will pick up the torch after Trump inevitably succumbs to his love of McDonald's, an event I'm still shocked hasn't happened yet, but I'm also not convinced they won't try to put his brain in a jar and build a Trump robot out of desperation, because there really isn't a person that can rival the populist appeal of Trump. But putting baby J.D. Vance in a corner certainly doesn't help build him up in Trump's image. In that same poll, 57% said Trump exceeded his authority as president, and 52% disapproved of the Elon Musk power grab. Another poll found that 55% of voters think Musk has too much power, and a Reuters Ipsos poll found that 62% of respondents didn't think presidents should be able to fire federal employees that don't don't support him. That same poll found that 58% of respondents worried about delays in social programs like student aid and Social Security. According to reporting from Slate, a YouGov poll found people are generally dissatisfied with a whole host of controversial recent moves: renaming the Gulf of Mexico, dropping corruption charges against Eric Adams, tariffs, and more. People are also not loving his deportation efforts against non-criminal immigrants and those here legally under refugee programs. According to Slate, also, quote, CNN found that 62% say he hasn't gone far enough to reduce the price of everyday goods, such as egg. Saying in another article, more and more Americans are asking, did Trump take egg? And while lefties on Blue Sky are trying to make Trump take egg a thing, where you post a picture of empty eggshells and say, Trump take egg, because it's a simpler message that Americans might actually understand, the reality is that Trump didn't necessarily take egg, but it turns out that despite the media frenzy around egg, people are actually pretty pissed about a lot of other things. Though egg remains top of mind, as prices have risen about 80 cents per dozen since Trump took office, which means the cost is on average.
You know, a lot of that, you know, you got to, for the people that don't seem to understand, you're voting for the president, right? All right, you fell for all this shit he said in his debates. You know, that's schlocky. That's what politicians do. They'll say just about anything to get elected. You got to understand some things are out of his hands. Price of eggs and things of that nature are one of them. All right, he's not solely responsible or can solely rectify that. All right, so again, that's one of those things that why would you expect anything to come of that? All right, damn. And no, I'm not defending him. I'm just saying it's the people that you're supposedly voting, and really you're paying attention to shit that really, you gotta understand, these people are going to do at the end of the day. I always make a statement and we back it up. All right, these politicians, especially the presidency, he's you know, these people are put in these positions as what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say they're just there to be there. It's pretty damn close. But it's the banksters, again, that run this world, you know, and there are people behind that you will probably never see, most of the time at least, that are pulling these people's strings. All right, the politicians, in fact, let me get this scripture to prove my point. Let's see here. 2 Peter 2, and I think I started 17. Nope, 18. Let's see. Let's see. This is going into, you know, false prophets and the like, but I'll go right to the point. It says, while they promise them liberty, all right, let's go into that liberty. Strong's G 1657, freedom, chiefly moral or ceremonial, all right, legitimate or licentious, from G 1658, unrestrained to go at pleasure. And that's, you know, something else too, because especially here in America, oh my God, you know, the hedonism and this place has got to go, and it is not a slave, rather freeborn, manumitted, exempt, because as a lot of people are finding out, especially since this 12-hour crash of TikTok, and people got to go to what was that site, China, Red Dust or something like that, something. Anyway, and they were seeing how good those people were living over there, and they were, you know, going back and forth with each other, and Moabites were telling them, hey, you people over there aren't free. You know, you've been lied to, you know, especially when they found out, you know, And to it, you know, you got to expect, of course, there's going to be a degree of propaganda from them too. But for the most part, they open their eyes, the Americans' eyes, into, hey, you're being sold a lot of bullshit. All right. These people are not too happy, and that's part of what you're seeing here, believe it or not, from these town hall meetings. Because, hey, when it was just us getting the short end of the stick, oh, it was all well and good. Because, hey, what were they saying? Well, I'm good. You people just need to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, the damn bootstraps again. So, hey, you'll understand if we say the same. Welcome to how we've been living for ages. All right. It says, while they promise them liberty, there's these politicians. You can throw these demonic ass preachers and whatever into that. They themselves are the servants of corruption, for of whom a man is overcome, of the same is he brought in bondage. Damn. Because you got to keep in mind, these people, your average salary, hold on, there's something I'm going to do here. Salary. Senators and congressmen. There you go. All right. Congressional salaries and allowances. No, that's downloading. Damn. I want you to see it. Salaries. Okay. Let's. U.S. constitutional line. Let's see. Members of Congress earn a base annual. Let me see what's the date on here. December 4th, 24. So this is up to date. Members. Put my little mug up here. Members of Congress earn a base annual salary of $174,000. Now, depending on what they did before they became a member of Congress, you got to allow for that. But it says unchanged since 2009. Damn. Due to consistent votes against automatic cost of living adjustments, leadership positions earn higher salaries, with the Speaker of the House receiving $223,500 annually, and other leadership roles earning $193,400. My point in bringing this up: how are all these motherfuckers? They're in here, and that's another issue too. For some of them, decades. Some of them not too long, and then they're millionaires, multi-millionaires. How? A recent, I skipped one. The Ethics Reform Act of 1989 established guidelines for COLAs. All right, that's cost of living adjustments, pegging them to the Employment Cost Index. However, Congress's repeated rejections of pay increases highlight concerns about fiscal responsibility, especially during economic downturns. A recent lawsuit challenges the constitutionality of blocking these adjustments under the 27th Amendment, seeking back pay for members of Congress. The court limited claims to those occurring post-March 2018, potentially reducing taxpayer burdens. All right. And I'll put the link to this. Let me bookmark it. There you go. All right. So I can put it in the description box. Lord willing, I remember. All right. So back to the video.
average $4.95 for 12 egg. So polls are showing the same thing that Republican lawmakers are experiencing back home in their town hall meetings. The high-profile moves taken especially by Trump and Elon are generally pretty unpopular, and people want to know what lawmakers plan on doing to take control back in the legislative branch. When Representative Rich McCormick held a town hall in the suburbs of Atlanta, one attendee asked him how he plans to, quote, rein in the megalomaniac in the White House. Others were mad about cuts to the CDC, an Atlanta-based agency. He then claimed that the Centers for Disease Control could do more with less, because a lot of the CDC's work is duplicative of work that AI could be doing, which received a lot of boos from the crowd, because people generally also are not thrilled to hear that lawmakers and billionaires are gunning to replace jobs with AI. The confrontation at last week's town hall has pushed McCormick to change his tune, saying Monday that, quote, I think we're just moving a little too fast, calling for impact studies to make sure we understand the impact of this cutting spree before enacting it. And this is in a firmly held Republican district. McCormick won his seat with 2/3 of the vote last year. And this response and willingness to voice at least some dissent for the fast pace of the MAGA takeover could signal a shift, that the voices of angry constituents showing up at these town hall meetings actually matter. Because unlike Trump and Elon, who get to sit in the White House and ignore the little voices screaming from down below, these Republican lawmakers have to actually answer for the things Republicans are doing. It makes it very real when there are actual humans sitting in the same room as you, telling you they're angry and asking you what you plan to do about it. That sounds like my actual worst nightmare. It's also why Republicans tend to hold fewer town halls than Democrats, and often hold those town halls in controlled settings, like over the phone, so they can continue to pretend that their heinous governing decisions definitely benefit everyone. No one is being personally hurt if I can't see them. The Republican empathy problem, I don't care unless it's directly impacting me, is overcome by the human response to being face-to-face with another person telling you you hurt them. Usually, there are still Republican lawmakers who hear the...
And let's be clear, they're talking about a particular group of people that don't look like me. All right, remember what I said a little while ago. Welcome to our world.
Hear the pleas from voters and say, bring out the chainsaw. And for those who are human but don't want to face the music, some of them are just deciding not to hold any more town hall meetings at all. According to NBC News, GOP leadership is now advising lawmakers that if they feel the need to hold town halls, they do so in more controlled settings, like phone calls, as I mentioned, or by vetting attendees to avoid scenes that go viral. But mostly, GOP leadership, according to aides, is urging our elected officials to stop engaging in in-person constituent meetings like town hall events altogether. A spokesperson for the RNC told NBC that...
Yeah, that's so-called white supremacy, Edomite supremacy in a nutshell. Control, control, control.
Despite this outpouring of anger, quote, the president's policies are incredibly popular, and the American people applaud his success in cutting the waste, fraud, and abuse of their hard-earned tax dollars. Also saying, quote, pathetic AstroTurf campaigns organized by out-of-touch far-left groups are exactly why Democrats will keep losing, end quote. The problem is that that's not what's happening. As I said, reporting on the ground indicates that there are Democrats and Republicans alike lambasting their elected officials, and Lord knows there is no concerted or well-organized effort on the left to AstroTurf Republican town halls. Give me a break. AstroTurfing is a term used to indicate the opposite of grassroots. Get it? AstroTurf, it's like fake grassroots. Grassroots movements indicate that they happen from the ground up, locally, whereas AstroTurf movements are where outside people or organizations bring in outsiders to make it seem like there's a grassroots groundswell of support or opposition to something, even though these are people and organizations that don't even live there.
She doesn't even go here.
If you read the book Dark Money, you'll learn that AstroTurfing was actually popularized by right-wing operatives to counter genuine left-wing grassroots work some 50 years ago, and was used extensively by the Tea Party movement as well. But that's cute.
Like when we bring up issues that are important to us, and all of a sudden you got something that's brought up that, what the hell is this? That sort of thing.
You think the left has the money?
And it's meant to disrupt, legitimate gripes that we would have. All right, this is some fucked up shit, man.
resources or organizational structure available to execute something like that, though. In reality, that RNC statement is simply attempting to shake off the very real fear of backlash radiating throughout the Republican Party, as viral clips from some town hall meetings, like in Idaho, where a woman was forcibly zip-tied and removed by what appeared to be private security forces after voicing opposition, or former Vikings punter Chris Kluwe calling MAGA a Nazi movement and being arrested and carried out of a city council meeting in California. Those clips will have ripple effects that hurt Republican lawmakers' chances of winning especially more vulnerable districts in 2026, which could hurt the razor-thin Republican majority in Congress. And while I think elected officials' reluctance to hold more town halls because of this angry outpouring is pure cowardice, because they literally work for us, and actually now that you mention it, I would like to see
Now, hopefully you can see the downside. I mean, regardless, this is a wicked-ass system. But my point for bringing this up is, yeah, they're going to lose some votes regardless. Because 2026, you got the midterms. All right. So, like she says, they have a razor-thin majority. All right. So, I mean, you keep going back from one to the other. And a lot of people have suggested, well, you know, you got to have more than a two-party system. All right. But again, they all are going to end up playing ball for the same, you know. Like I said, the banksters run this. This just makes it easier on them. All right. They had, who was it? The libertarian Jill Stein. Nobody even hardly remembers her. You know, you were so concentrated on this broad cosplay Harris, you know, watching her, it was painful to watch, I must admit, on her attempts at asking questions. But then you gotta maybe accept the possibility that all that was staged. You know, so again, you got in who you wanted in the first place. Here we go.
5 bullet points on what they did last week. I will say this is demonstrating a belief long held by political theorists of a certain ilk, and that is that leaders should fear those they govern and not the other way around. That idea is often misattributed to Thomas Jefferson, but was actually first published in a debate on socialism from 1914, and the full quote is, "Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty." I don't think it's quite so black and white as that, but it certainly feels cathartic to see the leaders in fear of the people for once, after decades of watching them operate above the fray with billionaires lining their wallets in ways that make them feel untouchable. And to see at least one GOP official change his tune a little bit in response to this blowback shows that there is power in what I've been advocating for since Trump took office, and that is to be annoying as fuck to your elected officials. In addition to these town halls, a growing surge of demonstrations have had people taking to the streets to voice their discontent. Democrats are organizing protests outside of the offices of especially vulnerable Republicans, like Representative Mike Lawler of New York, but also at the offices of Democrats, who many, myself included, say are not doing enough to stop the onslaught. After a demonstration at the New York offices of Chuck Schumer, a group of voters got a closed-door meeting with members of Schumer's staff. The grassroots activist group 5051 created an outlet for people wanting to take to the streets in organized protest and spread organically from Reddit onto other social media with the idea of protesting in all 50 states on one day. And they did so on February 5th, and again on President's Day, February 17th. They have another protest day scheduled for March 4th and have put together a website for events, communication, toolkits, and information. They've partnered with a number of orgs, including Political Revolution, a PAC that originally formed to support Bernie Sanders in 2016 and now calls itself the Political Action Committee dedicated to progressive grassroots activism. And I think the unique formation of this organization, truly out of thin air via social media, that manifested in actual...
Something else, she showed those pictures there. Something else I got to bring up for those that might have not noticed. But it has to go with these protests. You know, a lot of Jake are participating. And you also notice that you don't have as much resistance by the police, right? I mean, you saw that in those town hall meetings. That's them folks. But you know, every time everybody's begging for Jake to get involved and, you know, and help them in their situations. And Jake has come to the point where, you know what? Nah. And a lot of people have said that, for the last 60 plus years, we've tried to befriend everybody and everybody took advantage of us. And Jake is just tired. Stand on your own 2 feet. You use them bootstraps. Because what happens? Every time Jake helps somebody, usually these immigrants, Jake don't get anything out of it. They end up turning on Jake because a lot of these immigrants, they become, what's the term? White supremacist adjacent or something like that. They start adopting their, and let's be clear, they didn't just start that. They just, Jake has just been easy to pull one over on. And we're to the point now, Jake is saying, you know what, fuck you. You know what? And it shows in these protests.
In-person, real-world action led to a lot of press coverage, which has helped the movement grow. An additional grassroots movement has formed around an economic blackout scheduled for February 28th, that's this Friday,
that's
calling
today.
For everyone everywhere to not make any purchases or shop anywhere for a full 24 hours, beginning midnight on February 27th until midnight on February 28th. This is also getting a lot of press coverage and was reportedly organized by the People's Union USA, which describes itself as, quote, a grassroots movement dedicated to economic resistance, government accountability, and corporate reform. The organization has also called for week-long blackouts of individual companies like Amazon, Nestle, and Walmart, as well as additional 24-hour total economic blackouts moving forward. And you can learn more about the demands at thepeoplesunionusa.com, although I will say it seems like it's a brand new thing that's, right now at least, just led by a single guy named John Schwartz. And listen, every movement has to start somewhere. So I'm not interested in being a Debbie Downer naysayer. If this is going to bring power to the people, God bless. I think the demands he lists on his website are interesting. He claims to be nonpartisan and wants economic justice, healthcare for all, calls for an end to the commodification of basic human needs like water and shelter. I think if spun correctly, there's a lot here that could appeal to people across the political spectrum in a way that I think is sorely needed right now, because it is the moneyed interests that control our government and hurt all of us that we're all ultimately pissed off about collectively right now. I don't know, one white guy with a website, I hope he partners with some people that have track records of organizing that can help kind of broaden the coalition, I need a little more to fully trust what's going on. Rumors swirled online that popular historian Heather Cox Richardson was involved in the February 28th boycott, but she quickly made a statement saying she was not involved in any way. And here at Why America with Legia Miller, we're really concerned with sources, biases, motivations. I'm interested in giving the benefit of it out here, okay? I'm just flagging this, okay? Just keeping an eye out. Separately, black church leaders are calling for a 40-day boycott of Target during Lent starting March 5th to protest the corporation's cutting DEI programs, and the Latino Freeze movement is calling for spending freezes to protest a number of companies' removal of DEI programs. According to reporting from Axios, quote, decades of research into boycotts suggest they often end up having a counterintuitively positive effect as a larger silent majority votes with their dollars by shopping instead of staying home. According to reporting from CBS, however, quote, very often boycotts do not actually lower the sales of the boycotted organization substantially, says distinguished Professor Cohen Powells of Northeastern, an expert on online activism. He says effective boycotts need to be easy for people to participate in, make specific demands, and harness the power of social media. For instance, after the Parkland school massacre in 2018, an anti-gun group got Starbucks to ban guns from its stores after a Saturday-only boycott. Pro-Ukraine activists have persuaded 1,000 corporations to stop doing business in Russia simply by putting the names of those that do online. And one woman's online campaign helped force the end of Ivanka Trump's clothing line in 2018. You can vote with your money, you can vote with your feet, and you can vote in elections, notes Professor Powells, and I think the other ways to vote have been underused. So while I'm skeptical and concerned about organization and sources and who's calling for what, and there is evidence that general boycotts don't do much, the momentum towards boycotting isn't necessarily misplaced. The demands need to be more specific, however. Perhaps there really could be an impact if enough...
Strange how that works so well on us. You can guarantee that if Jake were to open up a store in one of their neighborhoods, they'd all come together and would agree upon not, funding Jake and keeping them open with their business. Oh yeah.
Enough people boycott Target, for example, and call specifically for re-implementation of DEI initiatives. Because ultimately, Target is going to make a business decision based solely on its bottom line. Which will cost more? The threat from Trump for keeping DEI initiatives, or the threat from consumers if they're ended? Right now, the company has determined their bottom line will be better if they fall in line with Trump. There is nothing other than a bottom line that will influence companies to do anything. So voting with dollars is the literal only thing we have to control them, because Lord knows our lawmakers aren't going to be regulating them anytime soon. And finally, in addition to the growing unrest at town halls across the country, large grassroots protest movements growing out of the people's desire to take to the streets or voice their frustration, and a growing interest in boycotts to force the hand of big business, another act of resistance I read about today that I wanted to highlight is happening over on Blue Sky, the lefty answer to Twitter, where The Guardian recently reported a secret network of federal workers resisting Doge from the inside have started alt-gov accounts for various government agencies, similar to what happened on Twitter during Trump's first term, but instead it's happening on Blue Sky because the literal owner of one of our major communications platforms is also deeply implanted in a White House that disdains dissent and isn't afraid to squash it. So yeah, they're not going to do this on Twitter now that Elon owns it. The hashtag AltGov network has around 40 accounts, including AltCDC, parentheses, they, them, Alt Fish and Wildlife Service, Rogue FEMA, and recently Alt Library of Congress, which hit the Blue Sky scene 2 days ago with the post, "Where is my fam?" Hashtag AltGov. The members of the AltGov group are internally vetted to ensure people posting actually work where they say they work. Posts range from memes to general government criticisms, but also importantly to confirming or denying official White House reports about what's going on inside the agencies.
Yeah, treating them like fucking children and shit. I love it. I just love it.
And sharing stories and information with the public about what's happening on the ground, as well as action requests either to other government employees or to the public. I've linked the Blue Sky starter pack made by Alt Space Force One with all the AltGov accounts and posts in one place in the sources linked in my description. It really is a sight to behold. My main point in laying out all of these growing movements fueled by anger at this administration is not only to illustrate a bigger picture that resistance is growing in real time, that people are paying attention, and that they're pissed, which for me personally instills some hope for our collective future, which is something we all could use a little bit of right now, but also to demonstrate the importance of even small acts of resistance. This all feels very disparate and unorganized right now, but I've spent the last couple months studying, along with other members of the co-learning lab I lead over on my Patreon, historical movements, as well as more recent movement building in the US and abroad. And I'm here to tell you, as far as I can tell, these things always take time, and they are never simple, well-oiled machines, especially not in a country like the US with 330 million people across millions and millions of acres of land, with tons of differences from race to creed to everything in between. Sitting and waiting for the perfect form of resistance, the perfect movement or organization, means you're just going to be sitting and waiting. Movements, even successful ones, never coalesce perfectly and never end in perfect victory. The civil rights movement was messy and disparate and successful in many ways, but also fell short of the ideals of many of its leaders. The slavery abolition movement led to war and, yes, to an end to slavery, but also to the beginning of new forms of disenfranchisement and segregation that we're still dealing with today.
There you go. That's a whole nother video in and of itself. What we've been trying to tell you time and time again. What they teach in these schools is not necessarily so, and they do it for a reason. All right? It's a whole nother video. I'm not going to get into it now, but they know this. Jake, you don't want to fucking listen. That's your problem.
Movements toward progress and equality are imperfect and move frustratingly slow. They require showing up over and over and over again. It's not one protest, one day of boycotting, one election, and finally it's all fixed. It's showing up over and over again, not necessarily making giant, all-encompassing actions, but instead regular and daily tiny acts of resistance. It's federal workers creating secret alt-gov accounts. It's canceling your Amazon Prime membership. It's showing up to a meeting for a local activist org you've been interested in. It's meeting your neighbor and exchanging phone numbers. It's taking to the streets to protest repeatedly. It's showing up to vote in every single election you can. It's so slow and frustrating, but what's the alternative? Would it have been better if abolitionists decided this is going too slow and the outcome probably won't be what I want, so I'm going to shut up and stay home? If civil rights movement leaders said, this boycott probably won't do all I want it to do, so it's not worth it to me. It's slow and it's frustrating and it's never enough and it will always fall short of expectations, and yet we show up and do tiny acts of resistance in whatever way we can anyway, because the alternative is acquiescence.
The irony here is that you keep bringing up things pertaining to what we went through as a mold for what you're doing. All right. I had read something a while back about how someone pointed this out, how Edomites, so-called white people, are so envious of us after what they've put us through. In other words, they want to be more like us. Wow.
And that's not the life or legacy I want to lead, and you shouldn't either. And I think it's important that we change the goalposts for our expectations around organizing and resistance, because if we acknowledge and accept that it's always going to feel a little messy, a little slow, frustrating, and it'll never be enough, that whatever change our actions create will always fall short of our ideals, then we're moving the goalpost to something much more realistic, which we need to do if we're going to play the long game. So I say pick your battles.
Doesn't matter about no long game. It's only like, you know, that's a minute,
do what
whatever.
you can with what you have, but for fuck's sake, do something. I hope these tales of resistance happening right now around the country make you feel a
Tales of resistance.
Because that definitely is what I'm clinging to moving forward. If you'd like to join me, I just launched the Why America Co-Learning Lab, a learning community having discussions and making connections along.
Feel free to cling, however long or short. It doesn't matter. This place is done. All right. So again, I will post the link to this if you care to rewatch it. But let's get these scriptures, because, hey, we're in the time of, you know, all their bullshit being revealed, and they're being pulled down out of the power seat. It does not matter. This is Mark 3. Lots of division. Lots of division. All right. And this is Yahushua talking to the disciples, and he called them up to him. And he called them unto him, and he said unto them in parables, how can Satan cast out Satan? That's the question. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand, as you're seeing. It's unfolding right before your very eyes. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. This place is being divided. In fact, we go further. This whole system, everything, this whole nation of Edom is divided and is folding in upon itself. And this is prophecy happening right in front of your face. Remember the statue in Daniel, where you're down to the feet with the mixed toes, can't support. So you're seeing the EU and NATO, and which was once that thought to be at least strong bond, now you're seeing it fall apart. Prophecy is being fulfilled. Prophecy is being fulfilled. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. You could say this also, that there's lots of poetic justice in it, and that the things that he's been infamous for doing to others is happening to him. It's another way to look at it. All right. So yeah. Let's see. Go back to where I was. So here you have it. The backlash against MAGA. Oh, they were all for it. It says the backlash against MAGA has begun. And again, that the leopards eating my face. I love that. All right. Because this is what you voted for. Now look what's happening. It was fine when it was happening to others. In fact, this is what you, when voting for these people that are in office now, this is what you would hope. It's going to hurt the black folk, so-called. Yeah. We can see them. Yeah. Because let me tell you something. The thing about this DEI, They thought all of that was going to be to hurt us. And it's exposing what we've said all along, and others. The affirmative action, this DEI shit, that helped people such as themselves, especially when it goes to the so-called white woman, all right, more than it helped us at all. And in those, the Skittles Nation, that's who it really helped. So they were surprised when a lot of Jakes said, oh, well, what did they do with affirmative action? They tricked the Moabites, one of their so-called, damn it, what do they call them? I forgot. I can't believe I drew a blank on that. What kind of minority did they call them? Model minorities. They tricked them into coming against us. Said, well, the reason I can't get into school is because too many niggers are in there in front of me, undeservedly so. Come to find out that our numbers stayed the same, meaning we put in the work to get there in the first goddamn place. But now you're losing ground. So now, as last I heard, they filed a lawsuit. But you decided to hook up with Ed Blum with his racist ass, and you got pimped. And hey, you did it to you, And a lot of these other ones are getting hurt. These East Asia, Elam, all right, they're getting caught up in this deportation wave. Hey, so that's where, you get what you ask for. What are you complaining about? Oh, man. What a tangle weave. Where we weave when first we practice to deceive. Hey, so with that, once again, I hope whoever views this is edified, of course. That's what we do here at Great Millstone. Filter everything through the scriptures. All right. And this is to, all right, make you aware of how these prophecies are coming to pass. And indeed, there is little time left. All right. So with that, hey, until the next video, shalom, shalom.